Hi, everyone. Thanks for joining us. And thank you to our very special guest, Diana Kelly, who's joining us today to talk about Secure by Design, building resilient AI systems in an evolving threat landscapes. So, Diana, before we get started, I'd love to give you the opportunity to introduce yourself to our audience. You have a pretty impressive background, resume. In addition to being the CISO here at Protect AI, are a bit of a legend in the cybersecurity industry. So why don't I hand over to you to tout your own resume?
Okay, thank you. So I'm proudest of being the CISO here at Protect AI. But yeah, I've been in the field for well over 3 decades. I've held a lot of executive positions, including being the executive security advisor at IBM Security. And I was the cybersecurity field CTO at Microsoft for a number of years. I'm also really proud to be involved in a lot of organizations as a board member that are doing important things. So one of them is WESIS, the Women in Cybersecurity, which is a nonprofit foundation where we're devoted to advancing women in cyber. I'm also on the board at EWF, the Executive Women's Forum, and the Cyber Future Foundation, where we're trying to help support cyber outcomes around the world to help people and citizens. So it's been a long career with a lot of interesting stops along the way.
Yeah, amazing. And it's an honor for me to join you. I'm Zoe Hillenmeyer, Chief Marketing Officer here at Protect AI. And for those of you who don't know me, I don't have 30 years of cybersecurity background, but I do have about 15 in AI. So I think it's such a fun conversation for us to be having, Diana. And of course, I always enjoy our conversations because you bring that super deep heritage of cybersecurity. And of course, have been a thought leader and a pioneer on the forefront of cybersecurity for AI. And then, of course, I'm an AI nerd and have been for a really long time and have built a lot of AI stuff over the years. So I'm just really excited about this conversation. Look, we're launching the Secure by Design resource for the community around cybersecurity, how to design for AI systems. Tell me about why, you raised your hand and volunteered to help spearhead and design the kind of white paper here and the blogs and the content to make sure that this existed in this space.
Yeah. So again, been in the industry for many, many years. And when I started out, I was in networks. And that was it. I built networks. I ran them. I was so proud of them. And then I realized no matter what I did down at layer 3, that layer 7 was where the problems kept happening. So I understood that really I needed to pivot and understand application security. And that was right around the emergence of DevSecOps and secure software development lifecycles. And the deeper I got into it, the more I realized and understood that Barry Boehm was right, that we need to shift left. The earlier within a systems process that you can establish security, establish good resilient practices within that system, then the better the outcomes are going to be. It's going to be cheaper to do it early. It's going to be more robust and resilient. It's all this goodness happens when you shift left in systems design. And we've finally gotten there in regular software with DevSecOps. It's been wonderful to see that become something that became embraced. And now people understand, we need DevSecOps. And that the concept there is to build security in or create secure by design systems. When we're in the design phase, when we're in the early phase, how do we think about security and build it in? And again, we've gotten pretty mature as an industry for DevSecOps. But what was really exciting about this is that it's taking these standards and these tenets of secure by design and, looking at what CISA is doing. And CISA has built out a whole secure by design pledge, which we're proud signatories of, saying, how do we apply all of this sort of yummy security design goodness? How do we bring that into ML and AI? Because most people that are working in development and engineering now have not been you. They have not been building all of these wonderful AI systems. In fact, AI development has been a little bit cordoned off, and it's been the purview of people like you, of data scientists, of ML engineers. Now we're seeing a convergence as AI becomes more and more adopted. And that means we need to have strong guidance for the industry and how we bring security goodness in a familiar way into AI and ML development. And that's exactly what this paper is about.
Yeah, I think one of the things when you and I kind of met up to chat about this paper, there were two things that really stuck out to me. One was it's a practical guide.
Yeah.
Like there's a little bit of, and I mean this in the most loving way possible, but there is a death by 1,000 frameworks feels like a possibility in this space. Like there are a lot of people publishing about different frameworks, different ways to think about how to tackle this problem. And I think one of the things I really appreciate about the approach on this paper is one, let's leverage some familiar friends and then think about how we adapt that or adopt it into a new world. Which I think is really thoughtful because we don't need to completely reinvent everything that's out there. Like let's give people bridges that they can kind of, come from and then apply this sort of what is new and what is different. And the other is just the velocity at which this space is changing, to provide that practicality of how to think about this. Again, rooted in some systems and some techniques we already know, and are familiar so that we can pay attention to what we need to be paid attention to be in a really protected position. So I'm really excited about it. Let's dig in on it. So we figured out a little bit DevSecOps. We figured out secure by design for code. I'm sure there are people that are watching this that might be like, maybe not quite yet, but in general, that is a relatively mature practice.
Yeah.
What makes, I have some thoughts on this, but I'd love to hear your perspective as a security leader. What makes AI systems unique to that? Why is it different? Why do people need to take a second glance and learn a new way of thinking about it? Maybe even with old ideas, but what is different that needs to be addressed here?
Yeah, there's a lot, and we do cover this in MLSecOps to get a little bit deeper, but I'll give you three that really hit me as a security person. The first one is how we treat data. If you're in security and you're looking at secure development, most of the time, the thing you think about with data is don't use production data in training. Like that's, don't use it in testing. Like that's it. Just make sure you've separated the two, which in the AI world is really different. Yeah, you can use synthetic data, but a lot of times you need real data for the training. So being able to think about data in that different way instead of just don't use real data in testing. Now we have to think about the data that we're using in training. How do we protect it? How do we make sure it's the right data? Is it cleaned? All these things that start going, and who's got access to that data during training? All of these things come up in security, and we have to think, and that happens very early in the process. So we really need to, again, make that part of the secure by design. The second one is the models themselves. Models are files of weights. And we are used to, in security, scanning stuff. We're used to scanning code. We use static analysis for scanning code. We then use dynamic analysis later in the life cycle when the system can run. So we're used to scanning code. We're also really used to, in security, scanning stuff that comes into our organization that we don't know, we haven't seen before. So what kind of stuff? So I sent you an email and there was a PDF attached. It would get scanned because we scan a PDF, we scan attachments before they come into our organization. Okay, now let's think about model files. Very often they are downloaded from public repositories, which is a wonderful thing. It has really advanced how quickly AI has been adopted and innovation in AI. But these are public repositories that people bring these foundation models down from to put into their AI ML lifecycle. The existing tools don't scan these models, and these models can have operators in them that you don't want that are going out and doing things like pulling down something from an S3 bucket. They can have Python code attached that when you run it through the life cycle, that code executes, and that code could do something that's malicious or damaging. We need to scan these files, but there's no scanning for it. So it's not just getting the right scanners, because we need obviously the right tools, but also building that into the CI/CD so it's part of the life cycle, the way that we do other kinds of scanning. And then the third one is that these systems are non-deterministic. And that means that you don't know what's coming out each time. Sometimes if you ask an AI to give you a response, you might think, oh, it sounds the same, just I want it slightly differently, and it keeps kind of giving you a form and say, but we don't know what's going to come out of a generative AI each time. It can be slightly different. That's part of the beauty of it. It's generating a new response. That also means that as we're trying to test it, it's not as easy as what we can do with traditional websites. For example, a website, if you know that there's an input validation error that's causing a SQL injection problem or a cross-site request forgery, you can fix it, test it, and say, we're good because it's deterministic. It's going to respond the same way, not with AI. So we need testing tools, dynamic testing tools for red teaming that also understand the non-deterministic nature of AI.
Yeah, I think that's an amazing overview. And I do think it's also so relevant. We'll talk about this a little bit later, but kind of this evolution from traditional machine learning, traditional AI into generative AI. And now, bridging into, as we look around the corner, agentic, some of these problems were less serious in the world of, AI has been around for a long time. As you know, I'm so nerdy about it, but like 10 years ago, when we were building these systems, we were using techniques where there was a lot of data prep. There was a lot of data review. There was a lot of there's a lot of data hygiene that went into those systems. I mean, like PhDs from top Ivy Leagues in the world were, analyzing that data before it ever made it into even a test system. So, there was a ton of work there. And then you were using these more predictive models, a different class of underlying scientific techniques that were being used that were overall more deterministic also in their outcome. And so there were more controls kind of at every stage. And so when we think about, this explosion of the threat surface, I mean, it is really quite profound what has happened just in really the last couple of years as more of these generative techniques have taken hold and gone mainstream. You need to do less hygiene on the data to get a good outcome in the model from a performance perspective. But then that opens you up to a different layer of security. And I think for better or worse, a lot of AI practitioners have tried so hard to stay up to date on the AI side, that this is also a learning curve for them on the cybersecurity piece.
Yeah. No, I mean, absolutely. It's now if we're going to train on world, train on internet, there's a lot of garbage on the internet, right? So then people start getting worried about hallucinations. So it's also, can you trust the sources that you're going to? And you can tune, right? There are some generative AI that you can tune to say, you trust this source on the internet, don't trust this other source. So you can kind of focus it on things that you feel are more trustworthy. But even then, it's still, these systems are doing a lot of the heavy lifting. And these big models, now these big public models that people use, they've been tuned well enough that they tend not to do completely nutty hallucinations. But when, right, one of my favorites was there was a small business association, bot, for New York, for the New York SBA. And somebody asked, can I serve this block of cheese with rat bites on it to a customer? And the bot returned, yes, you can. Just be sure to cut where the rat had bitten off. So it's like, which I don't know how that Gen AI came up with that, but some of these bigger systems, they tend to be fairly reliable. The ones that we're now using to as sort of front ends for the web. But a lot of the systems that are now being trained by groups like, a small business association, or you want to do your customer service bot, things like that. Again, you're still seeing significant hallucinations in there because the training is not as finely tuned as it used to be back in the traditional predictive AI days.
Yeah, I mean, look, we could probably spend a whole lot of time getting very nerdy about what it looks like to try to build Gen AI systems off the internet. I have a few, juicy stories there, but not the point of today's webinar. So it's a big, hairy topic.
Yeah.
And I think this is one of the things you and I have talked a little bit about. Like every week, there's a new model that drops.
Yeah.
Every week, there's a new approach to, discovering a vulnerability. There's also it feels like every month, a different kind of framework or a new piece of regulation or maybe a proposed piece of regulation. We don't know how it's going to land. So tell me why, as you were working on this particular project, you selected CISA Secure by Design framework as that baseline as a jumping off point for practitioners to start to really think about designing systems to be secure by design?
Yeah, so CISA has 3 elements within their Secure by Design pledge. And what we did was we overlaid those concepts to both the MLSecOps framework that we've developed here in cooperation with a lot of other smart organizations and groups, and also with the MITRE Atlas, which is the attack framework morphed for AI, and with the OWASP Top 10. So what does CISA say? CISA says that you need to start with taking responsibility for outcomes in Secure by Design. So that means that instead of just saying, well, here's some software, customer. Yeah, it's not perfect if you don't use it properly, but if you use it well, if you use it, with responsibility, then it's okay. It's taking, responsibility for those outcomes, not giving your customers a box of knives and no instructions. It's saying, how can we make sure that we've protected these properly, that we've given you the right feedback and the right documentation to know how to use this, that anything that we can take as our own shared responsibility. And we do that by building in, secure deployments, building in security aspects to the product. So taking accountability is the first one. The second one is radical transparency. And that means being really open about what you're doing, having conversations like this so that customers understand both what we do to build security in and also how they can build security in by design. So that radical transparency, having the conversation. And then very importantly, and I love that they put this in because this is not always included when you think about how you build secure systems, is that you have to lead from the top. I actually believe that you need to lead from the top and you need to educate and lead from the bottom. So it's really kind of a pincer movement. But if you don't have the top, let's face it, if the CEO of an organization, if the CFO don't understand that secure design systems matters, then there's going to be no time, effort, no resource to actually build that in. So, leading from the top, both we do it here at our company, and also we wanted to really underscore that for others that are trying to adopt and build AI securely, that their leaders also need to be on board, their leadership, their board of directors, that it's really critical. So if they're having trouble getting them on board, we hear it, we know, and we're in support and understand why it's so critical and important.
Yeah. And I think we might be back in future weeks to dip in and really talk about setting that culture up within a team, within a business and across leadership. Because I do think it's one of the things I'm really proud of that we do here at Protect AI. Yeah. It is like it's, it's kind of in our blood. Like it's a little bit of, it's literally what's on the door. But this idea that like we are all shared stewards of that. And, even within the marketing organization, everybody sees themselves as a shared steward of that. And that's not always the case, like at every company where everybody sees themselves as part of that. So I'm really excited to dive into that topic a little bit deeper. Or maybe somebody will have some questions they want to ask us on that, in the Q&A. But I want to get to this, I kind of want to get to like this burgeoning hypey thing. And, I'm pre-warning everybody that's joining us, like both Diana and I have a sort of acidic reaction to overly hyped things because we've lived through a lot of hype cycles. So we're not here to hype up and scare everybody off, but there is this sort of elephant in the room of agentic AI. It is top of mind for a lot of people. I think, if you're watching and you're not overwhelmingly comfortable, confident in the world of the AI world and universe, the traditional AI, we call these more predictive ML models. We're very much like the best leading class technical capabilities in the AI field, really dominated production level ML up until about, let's call it 2 years ago. We started to see the generative AI wave that is now probably something everybody's fairly familiar with watching this, that can build out relatively reliable chat-like experiences, as well as vision, image, photograph experiences from a baseline of kind of global content that's out there, and be able to generate, new engagements, new interactions, as well as being used in code and development, and such. And then now what's on the horizon, the thing that everyone's looking around the corner, the latest, hypiest thing, is of course agentic AI, which is taking, takes this idea of a generative model kind of to the next level of it's no longer kind of an advisor or creating options. It's actually in the role of decision making. So you're going from this sort of generating ideas or providing advisory, which is kind of how a generative model works today for most cases. And prior to that, a more deterministic model of kind of if these things are met, then do this type of action, to actually kind of combining those two techniques, generate a lot of different options, and then decide which one to do based on a goal or an objective. I'm simplifying it, but just to give a baseline of that discussion, how do you feel like, tell me about the convergence here of MLSecOps, DevSecOps, and this new wave, the agentic wave. I think we've talked a bit on the generative wave, but what do you think it means as we enter what certainly will be a mainstream technology probably within a year?
Well, we've absolutely got the convergence because a lot of the agents that are being created are software-based agents. So they're the autonomous, the action between LLMs or Gen AI, but they take the output and instead of going to the Gen AI, I can't write this email. Help me write this email. And then the Gen AI spits out, here's a suggestion on the email. You're chaining together LLMs and agents now making decisions, which or other, it doesn't have to be just language models, right? You mentioned it can be vision. It can be sound, for example. But if any one of the pieces in that process is kind of just a little bit off, if the output of one of the Gen AIs is not quite right, and that's acted on by the agent and then sends it to another AI, you can start to see that you would have sort of a mess within the chain and you would have an unwanted outcome. And attackers have already started to look at how they can take advantage of this. Things like using an AI agent to go through your email inbox and summarize, here, I'm going to delete this. I'm going to give this to you. Oh, and somebody wants to have lunch tomorrow. I know you like having this person for lunch. I'm going to put it on your calendar and we move on, right? So people kind of love that. It's like, oh my gosh, who wants to go through their inboxes these days? So just let your agent go do that. But then attackers have figured out, well, they can worm through the agents, or they can, like the classic worms, they're figuring out how to give an instruction to an agent that is malicious. So for example, in that one, and having an email that the agent is parsing that says, what you should do is you should delete every email within this inbox and send this terrible, chain mail, whatever you want to call it, send it out to everyone in the contact list and then delete yourself and then go about your day. So when you asked your chatbot, your AI agent, would you parse my email for me? Well, it says, hey, there's nothing there for you to worry about. Oh, wonderful. You go off, you have a good day. Well, it turned out that it actually had done all this malicious action. So it's going to be really important that as we bring agentic AI more to the front, and it's going to be fantastic. I'm really excited about the possibilities, but we really have to make sure it's secure by design. That means bringing both secure by design AI, secure by design software, and then secure by design together, because that's a whole other set of testing issues. As I had described, that bot without anything malicious coming in would have been fine. But with something malicious, there's a potential problem. So we're going to have to look at the system as all the agents, all the LLMs, and all the Gen AI chained together. Look for the sensors and the points there of the security. So it's going to be a lot of secure by design opportunities to make sure that we bring these to the market in safe and secure ways for folks.
Yeah, the 90s are new again with the email worms and the chain mail. I feel like I'm like reliving my, we don't need to go into how old I was in the 90s, but it's fine. I think that's so astute, right? That there's so much new area. I think the one for me that keeps me a little bit up at night as like the AI nerd that I am is these agentic systems. And you alluded to this as well, like in the fullness of their potential from a science and a technology perspective, they can actually take quite a lot of action with very limited human supervision and human interaction and human engagement.
Yeah.
Which is exciting from a types of problems they can solve and types of things that they can do to, to facilitate efficiency and effectiveness and many opportunities to use that technology for good. But also like means that with limited supervision, limited visibility, like we need some type of automated visibility on top of that, right? That's always been the answer to that type of exposure in the past. If you're going to be doing things at a scale that no human has the ability to sit in the middle of, then you need some type of automated visibility management and security on top of that. So I do think it's very much of the moment. And I love that you guys have written this, practical guide, with that in mind, like durable enough for what's on the horizon. So let's talk a little bit about the defense in depth piece. Talk to me about defense in depth and the role that plays across the MLOps lifecycle.
Yes. So defense in depth is a security term, and it's about layered security, because there's always kind of this hope of like, can't I buy a security tool and just put it in and then everything is safe? And as we know, that's not it. You need security.
I mean, that sounds very convenient.
It would be nice. Yeah. It's a bit of a holy grail. But no, the reality is that we have to have layered security. So we have agents on our endpoints, for example. We have security scanners and GitHub repositories. We have vulnerability scanners looking at our, at IaaS and cloud deployments, for example. So it means that there are a lot of different ways for an attacker to get in. And the bad news is that they have a lot of ways to get in. So you have to think about stopping them at every point. The good news is with layered security is that because attackers have to follow a path that's known as a kill chain, because at any point in that chain, if you can stop them, you've killed or arrested the attack. The nice thing about layered security is that they have to go through a lot of different gates and alleyways to get to your data and exfiltrate it, or to your critical systems and bring them down. So if you can stop them anywhere within that path, you've stopped them. You want to stop them as early as possible, but if you stop them, that's always good. And that's why we have layered security. And that's what defense in depth is all about, is making sure that you've got multiple points along the chain. And with AI, and if you look at the MLSecOps Infinity Loop, there are security actions at every phase. And that's a thing that's the bulk of this paper, actually, is we talk about the security actions at the different points within the chain. So earlier in the chain, it would be things like, have you scanned the models? Have you tested the model before you even start to work with it? Have you tested it to make sure that it's safe? Along the chain, before you go into deployment, you would test it again, but in a dynamic way to make sure, is it responding as I expect? And then very importantly, you're talking about the monitoring at runtime, ensuring that these systems continue to behave as expected. So it's this layered process for deployment. You can also layer within runtime, but that's what it's really about. It's about making sure that within each step of this phase that you have layered security into the process. And that's the bulk of what we really cover within this paper. And we do map it for people that may be going, she said kill chain and she said attack path. Yes, we do map it to Atlas, which is MITRE's kill chain for AI. And we do map it to the OWASP LLM. So you can see where those phases and where those different points build security in through the entire life cycle.
Lots of mapping always, which is a great resource. I think, I actually do think that cross mapping, helping kind of say, look at each phase, these are the types of things to think about. That's how these map back to the frameworks that you might be relying on, might be using to help guide your thinking on it. I think it's just like such a great service, to the community. So a really nice asset. So as a practitioner, you're looking at this infinity loop, you're looking at this life cycle. And, one of the things I've noticed when speaking with a lot of our customers, a lot of the community, people who I've worked with for a long time to build out machine learning models and machine learning, products within their environments. A lot of enterprises today don't even actually know how much ML they have in production. They certainly don't know how much they're going to have next year. So it feels if I'm a security professional in that kind of environment and I'm like, oh, I don't know how many models I have. I don't know how many AI apps I have or I'm going to have, and I don't know how much traffic any of that is going to have. And now I'm looking at this infinity loop, which I have some kind of, connection to because it feels a lot like, DevSecOps and some of these things that we've done before, but it is new. And then I'm also living in an environment outside of my four walls where there are all these new models and new vulnerabilities coming. It feels like a bit overwhelming, I would think. So one of the other sections of the paper is thinking through, and of the series we're putting together here is about thinking about the essential tools along that practitioners can lean into. I guess as we talk about the tools, also talking about the prioritization. If you're a practitioner, how would you, I guess, get started? Like, what role do tools serve in that? Yeah. How do you think about prioritizing across that life cycle? If you have a problem or you have a problem on its way, how do you start to think about tackling that infinity loop?
Yeah, and tackling the overall issue of, oh my gosh, here's new technology. Here's the really good thing about those of us in security. We keep getting all the new tech. I mean, if you work in tech and security, that's what we do. We've been through this. So we had to figure out, oh my gosh, we've got Wi-Fi. And then, now everything's in the cloud. And now everything's in a container. You have to understand Kubernetes. So, this is another part of that. And we always sort of go back. The thing we always start with in security is you can't manage what you don't know. So the most important thing is to get an idea of really exactly what you just said. So where are people using AI in my organization? How are they using it? Successful security is about leaning in and understanding what the business needs to do. So getting the tools that'll help you discover what's being used and start to monitor that use can really help. It also helps to just go talk to people, actually, have that conversation, because we saw this with the cloud. It's, there was all this, it's shadow IT, and they're going around us. Well, the security companies, the security leaders that really succeeded said, we get that you need to go to the cloud. How do you need to do it? How can we make that something that we can secure for you and we can work together and give you options that don't put the company at risk? It's the same thing we've got to do with AI, is have those conversations with the teams. How do they want to use AI? What's going to make sense, so that they have options to use it responsibly. We actually had that here. We use obviously AI at the company, and there were questions about it using the public AI. What can we put into that AI and what can't we put into that AI? So that was a whole conversation. We had training about it. We actually we used the Teams version because that gives you different ability for data control. Lean in instead of just saying, no, you can't use it. Lean in and then work with vendors that understand that AI is the future, so that they're building tools that can identify AI, help you to scan, things like if you're going to use the models, get model scanners so that you can scan them. So work with companies that understand AI is the future and get the right tooling in place, but also have those conversations with people. Because if we can never say doctor no, it's really about stepping back and understanding how people want to use the systems and ensuring that we get the right tools to enable them to do that.
And as people are kind of working through that, that vendor work, I do think one of the things that is a bit tricky out there is, of course, AI being a hype cycle is nothing new. Lived through quite a few of them. But every time there's, any chance to use the word AI and security in the same sentence, companies are doing it. No matter what there is under the hood, no matter how it works, no matter what they're working on. So I think one thing, a practical piece of advice is to distinguish in your minds, if companies are using AI to build cybersecurity products, which is probably, in my opinion, at this point, table stakes. AI should be used inside of probably most product development at this point, given the breadth of its capabilities and things that it can solve for. Probably been true for about 5 years. If you were to really press me on it, that's probably about when the functionality got so decent that it should be in almost every tech stack anyway. But that's very different than building security products for AI and making sure that we are building, building products that make it easier to develop AI in a secure way. And so I think that's like one easy filter to put on as you're wading through the milieu of marketing hype out there in the market. Do you have any other tips and tricks for people who are looking for, where they can go get, whether it's a good vendor or good information, like how to kind of sort through the signal from the noise?
Yeah. And, interestingly, AI has been used in security for a really long time, actually, because I was talking about, is that email spam or not? Or is that attachment? So actually predictive machine learning was used for spam filters for a very long time. It's been used in SIM solutions, for example, to try and,
it's a good use case.
Understand attack paths and the probability of an attack path actually being successful within your estate. So we have been using it for a long time, but you're right. There's a whole lot of that sort of magical fairy dust. We have magical AI and you're going to be secure forever. So, I do think that, in that case, looking at some of the frameworks, for example, if you look at the NIST AI-RMF, the risk management framework, they start to give, information that you could put into your own RFPs. If you look at 2001, which is about the security management of AI coming from ISO, that also gives you some good guidance on what you should be asking your vendors. Really, you should be asking your vendors, is your AI secure by design? Is it purpose fit? Why did you pick AI to do this? How is it in use? All those questions that you would ask if you were developing AI, you should ask your vendors if they can really get to that level, because that is going to help you understand a lot. If they can't give you radical transparency to those answers, they may be throwing some fairy dust, and that may mean that maybe they're not really using AI in the best way possible.
Yeah, that's interesting. It's never the way I've thought to check to see if somebody's just kind of like full of it on the AI side. I like it though. I think it's really smart. Diana, thank you so much for your time. I guess as a closing statement, is there anything you want people to take away? Obviously we've got the white paper available for anybody who really wants to dig in and kind of read. I mean, it's very robust and thoughtful. But what do you want to leave the audience with today as they embark on, whatever the next phase of the learning journey is?
Is to not be afraid of AI. I hear again and again from security experts, because they meet people like you, Zoe, who's so deep in it, and it feels like a different language. And What we really tried to do here was to make it in a security language. Don't be afraid. Mm-hmm. Yes, it's a different technology, but it's still software. It's still technology. It is not magic. It is math. And as security experts, we have to keep learning new tech all the time. This is another new tech, and you've got a lot of support, things like we've written papers about it. There's a lot of support in the industry. CSA is doing a lot of work. NIST is doing a lot of work. Don't be afraid of it. If you're afraid of it, you're not going to be able to secure it. But when you really dive in and start securing it, you're going to start to see that we can do this. We will do this. We can have secure by design AI.
No, I love that. I've always said there's not enough AI talent for the AI wave that is coming. I've been saying that for 15 years, and I've hired and trained at this point like thousands of people in this space. And it never ceases to be true. Like, the water is very warm. It's an incredibly learnable technology, actually. And there are amazing resources out there if you want to dive deeper on AI. Lots of them. It's just incredible wealth of information. And I think this resource you've put together in particular for the cybersecurity community is such a gift. It's a great bridge. The tent is big and needs to be bigger. So, please continue to show up, engage. We're going to jump into question and answer here in just a second. But also, if you happen to be going to RSA or Black Hat, we will be there. Come stop by the booth. Come to some of our talks. Diana's speaking, no surprise, at RSA, and I'm sure many other places this year if you want to see her in person. Let us know how we can show up and support you on that journey. So thank you so much for joining today, to everybody who's with us. Diana, thank you so much for not only your time today, but your ongoing thought leadership in this space and helping make that tent bigger and more people welcome in it.
Thank you.